So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? Absolutely. Although I like my fantasy with a little bit more romance, this one was a really good read. It was a great balance between a more serious fantasy and still being really easy to read and follow. Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss this week's Panic at the Book Club Book of the Week, which is Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how to take part in this online book club. We list the next 4 books down below and on TikTok, along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. We also accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message. Kissen's family were killed by followers of a fire god. Now, she makes a living killing gods, and she enjoys it. That is until she finds a god she cannot kill. Skedi is a god of white lies. He somehow bound himself to a young noble, and they're both on the run from unknown assassins. Joined by a disillusioned knight on a secret quest, they must find their way to the ruined city of Blenraden, where the last of the wild gods reside, each to beg a favour. Pursued by demons and on the cusp of a civil war, they will all face a reckoning. Something is rotting in the heart of their world, and only they can be the ones to stop it. First, we'll discuss any spoiler-free points before moving on to a clearly marked section of the video, which will contain spoilers and more specifics about the book. The chapter lengths all seemed reasonable. They were all around that 10-page mark. However, it was super deceptive. The book itself looked quite small, only being 288 pages, but the text was tiny. Although I guess it is still much smaller than your average fantasy book, so... Romantasy is my favourite genre, and although this book was a lot more fantasy-based than my usual go-to, there was definitely some potential there for some romance. I do sometimes struggle with more serious fantasy because, in all honesty, I do find that sometimes they do take themselves a little bit too seriously. They will often spend a full 600-page book just setting up, and it'll pretty much just contain world building, and that's fine, but personally, I just get a little bored of that sometimes. I just feel like this one did have a really good balance. There is a lot of information and a lot of world building, and it is a series, so of course there is some setting up for the next book, but it kept me entertained throughout. It certainly had me guessing throughout the book what was going to happen next. This book was from 4 different perspectives, and although I'm not usually a fan of when books have so many different point of views, I do think that this book did it really well. Plus, I got a lot more attached than I thought I was going to. My opinion of them changed multiple times throughout the book. They all had really interesting pasts and secrets to uncover. From a relatively early point within the book, most of the characters whose perspective you're reading from are actually together, which I really think helps. You're pretty much following the same storyline from 4 different characters, so it's still pretty easy to follow. Unlike some fantasy books where for most of the story they seem totally unrelated and all over the place. And the characters seemed really diverse and inclusive. It follows a god-killing woman, an ex-knight, a young girl, and a god. But there was more to it than that. I mean, it was LGBTQ, it had characters with disabilities, it had wheelchair users, and characters who were deaf and used sign language. I mean, one of the main characters being not only a strong, independent, bisexual woman, but a god killer who faces the challenges of having a prosthetic leg in that line of work. The overall storyline was really interesting, and although there were moments that I did see coming, there were also moments that I did genuinely find surprising as well. The ending was set up really well. It was suspenseful, intriguing, and it made me want to read the next one. I would say that it took me a little bit to get stuck into it, but once I did, the pacing was really good and I really enjoyed it. It was interesting, well written, and if you're looking for something like a more simplified Brandon Sanderson style series, then this one's definitely for you. Now, moving on to that part of the video where I suggest if you haven't read this book yet, go do that first, because beyond this point there'll definitely be spoilers. The character development in this book was great. I mean, I changed my mind about these characters so many times. At the beginning of the book, Kissen was completely intolerable. At the beginning, Kissen was truly intolerable. I remember marking a particular part of the book where I was like, and gods are meant to be the arseholes? Because, I mean, Skedi didn't seem all that bad in comparison to how she was treating Inara. But then my opinion changed as she became a more likeable character. At one point, she says that when she first started her apprenticeship, her teacher had complained non-stop about her company. But then, after a few weeks, he stopped, and now she understands why. Because after years of working alone, being on the road with others made the world brighter. And you can really see that in Kissen's character. Skedi's character, on the other hand, went from someone that I was interested in, maybe even a little bit suspicious of, and then someone I genuinely warmed to. But then he betrayed Inara in such a horrible way, but was still able to gain back some of that trust. I do think that Skedi's memories does have something to do with Inara and why other people don't seem to know about her. Or why in the beginning of the book people said that Inara's mum didn't have any children anymore. Like maybe Inara died or was sick and her mum made a deal or something. Like the book definitely left a lot of unanswered questions when it came to Inara, but her character changed so much just in this first book. I can really see her becoming a really cool character, and I'm really intrigued as to what the hell is going on with her. Elagast, on the other hand, was really predictable. I do feel like it shouldn't have been too surprising that Elagast planned on sacrificing himself and not one of the others. I mean, he had already put himself between Kissen and one of those shadow demon things, so it wasn't a huge leap. But I suppose as a reader, we do get a better view of what those characters are like than these strangers who have only really known each other for a few days. I wasn't expecting that ending though. To be honest, it didn't even occur to me to suspect the king. I mean, it makes total sense. He's corrupted by the power of the god who saved him, and he feels that power being threatened, so he's willing to sacrifice the only thing he loves in order to get more power. Then the rebellion was trying to stop the king's plans by trying to prevent Elagast from getting there in the first place through that curse. I mean, all the clues were there and it came together really nicely in the end. I just did not connect those dots until the end. So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? Absolutely. Although I like my fantasy with a little bit more romance, this one was a really good read. It was a great balance between a more serious fantasy and still being really easy to read and follow. And will I be reading any more from Hannah Kena? I might be wrong, but I don't think she's done any other books apart from this series. And as soon as I did finish this first one, I added the second one, Sunbringer, to my wish list. I have so many on my TBR, so it might take me a little while to get to, but I am looking forward to finding out what happens next. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book?
I read Godkiller for Panic at the Book Club this week because I was struggling to find anything to read, and I thought, all right, I'll give it a go. It's quite an easy read, and like on the surface, it's quite a light read, but like the world itself is kind of like as complicated as you wish to make it, and goes probably deep enough for book one without being overbearing or a bit too wordy. I really like the storyline. I like that there weren't actually too many characters, because you know when you get like Game of Thrones or even some of Sanderson's, and you're like, all right, cool, now we're randomly at this person, randomly at that time. It was all very linear and they all met up and it's like, oh cool, so it was like one solid storyline, which was good. And I quite like the concept of the gods and all that, and it was all very, it felt like a book that, to be fair, could have been written as an epic fantasy, but then you would have wasted an extra 500 pages on explaining mountains and lore and things. Yeah, the one bit of the book I struggled with is when the knight went, "Oh, I need to find a sacrifice," and then they all start panicking. It's like, oh, he's obviously going to pick himself. Why the hell are you all panicking? And then it went, "Oh yeah." And then I talked to Terry about it, and she went, "Well, they don't know that you read the book, you idiot." And I was like, "Ah, yes, dramatic irony." See, I understand, but it was really good. I would recommend it to someone who just wanted like a nice little bit of world building, little adventure storyline. It's quite good being like inclusionary of all the different characters and all that. Yeah, I've already downloaded the second one. Yeah, it's very good.
Next week, we're discussing Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. So don't forget to get your comments and thoughts in by Monday, the 17th of June at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. The following week will be The Last Murder at the End of the World. But don't forget, if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 down below along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It is always appreciated, and I will see you next week. Bye.